All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Larkspur Planning Commission. Today is Tuesday, July 8th, and it's 7:02 or so. I'd like to call the meeting to order with a roll call.
Yes, I'm here.
Present.
Commissioner Chalmers
Yes.
and Commissioner Hull,
Present. Here.
and Chair Swisher is absent from this meeting.
Okay,
So you have a quorum.
excellent. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to item 2, public comment on matters not on the agenda. Do we have anyone here or on Zoom that would like to comment on something not on the agenda? Okay, no one in the audience and no one on Zoom, so we'll move on right on to item 3, the Community Development Director's Report.
We had an appeal of 201 Hawthorne that was heard by the City Council last week, and they denied the appeal. And I think that's the only one that we have. That's the only one that we have pending.
Okay,
That's all I have to report.
thank you. All right, moving on along quickly. Item 4, public hearings. So we're going to start with 320 West Baltimore Avenue, which is regarding the 880 square feet of city land between 320 and 330 West Baltimore. And can we please have the staff report?
Thank you. The city council is considering selling or will be considering selling a strip of land that is owned by the city for a drainage line that goes from the street to the creek. That's adjacent to 320 West Baltimore Avenue. The property owner owns the site where the house is, which is to the right of the drainage parcel that the city owns, and then also the parcel on the other side of the site. And so he would like to merge the 3 lots into a single site. And the planning commission, or anytime the city sells property, they need to run that action past the planning commission to see if it's consistent with the general plan or in conformance with the general plan. And so we've reviewed the general plan, and there's nothing very specific to selling strips of land under these conditions. And the only things that are potentially affected are wildlife, since this is an area where spotted owl nest, and also the site has a number of really mature heritage trees that the city would be interested in protecting if some sort of development was proposed. So the applicant or the city attorney's prepared a potential sales document that the city council will consider, and it does include conditions to protect the trees and the spotted owl from any impacts from potential construction that might happen as a result of the sale and lot merger. So staff is recommending that you find that or you adopt resolution 202501 and find that the sale is consistent with the general plan. And I don't have more to add to that, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And the city attorney, Brandy Robinson, I hope I'm getting the name right. She's right here, right? I'm so used to calling her by her first name. Robinson? Yes. Okay, right there. Robinson is here to answer questions if you have any specific to the sale agreement.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody on the commission have any questions for staff, or should we open it? Maybe let's open it up for public comment first. Does anyone in the public, in the room or on Zoom, have any comments about this?
There is one hand raised on Zoom. It's the number ending 1402, which you should be able to unmute and speak now.
James Holmes. My concerns with this conveyance are probably more an issue of valuation and public works than with the general plan. But that said, the staff report says that this conveyance would give the buyer significant additional development rights, including some possibly ministerial non-public review rights, and yet the contract price is only $7,500. That seems awfully low. I mean, how was that value reached? Was it the value to the city, or was it the value to the buyer? It's hard to believe that value to the buyer wouldn't be considerably more. And regarding the value to the city, I don't think something should be sold without knowing the reason why the city originally required conveyance of a fee simple strip rather than the usual easement. That is a very unusual deviation from the standard practice even back in the 1920s. And we have no idea why that is. I did offer to research the city council minutes because the city councils in those days were very much more involved in this kind of thing, and that offer wasn't taken up. But suffice it to say, there may have been a reason. One possibility, according to Larkspur Past and Present, it reports that there were large quarrying operations uphill on the other side of the canyon wall. And it might be that the city was concerned that more extensive drainage provisions needed to be made on account of that. Now, maybe after 100 years, they're satisfied that that's not the problem. But we don't have any evidence of that. We don't have any evidence that it's been looked at. We don't know what the condition of the pipe, the current drain pipe is, and what would be required, excuse me, to fix it. The city has surveyed some of their drainage pipes. And so based on the evidence before you, it's kind of a black box. So in short, I am concerned about a potential bargain sale without due diligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Do we have anyone else on Zoom or here in the audience? Okay, then I'll close the public comment portion of the hearing. And I'll bring it back to the commission for questions of staff or our city attorney or any deliberations.
So,
Yeah.
Questions first?
yeah, I interestingly enough, James had a lot of the same questions I had.
Yeah. Same here. actually. But
Which is, you know, what happens if they need to replace that pipe, which is right through the guy's carport and, you know, the whatever's up above.
The city would retain an easement, which seems would be actually more common today that we would just get an easement to do this because we're subjecting, and maybe the city attorney should comment on this more, but I would think we are at more liability by owning the property when someone could, for example, trip on top of it or do something, because we still own the property even though someone's using it as their own. So I would think it would actually reduce the city's liability to not own it, and we would retain an easement to be able to maintain the drainage pipe, replace the drainage pipe, and do any other work that needs to be done to maintain the city's infrastructure.
is that easement agreement coming back to planning commission, or
I don't know.
once we approve it today, is it, or do whatever we do today, is that done? Are we done with the commission?
We could let Brandy Robinson answer some of these questions.
And the other thing is when you look at that piece of property, there's huge redwood trees, you know, what kind of shape is that pipe in? And it seems like we ought to find out ahead of time before, you know, before we give it up. But
Yeah. And when I looked at it, had a lot of debris in it.
Yeah.
So it looked like no one had kept it clean. So, and the reason I was asking about the easement is because I would want to see if we were going to do an easement, I would want to see certain requirements in there that would require it always to be kept clean, full access, maintenance rights, repair, replacement. There would be a lot of things that need to go in there before we could approve it.
Yeah, we have prepared an easement, a draft easement agreement, giving the city rights to enter into the easement, of course, for maintenance purposes, maintenance and repair purposes. That should come before the planning commission. I don't know what the timing of that is. Elise might be able to speak to that better.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that this planning commission needs to review that because the general plan conformance findings, I don't think is relevant to that, in my opinion, that it's lack of an agreement doesn't violate any part of the general plan. But maybe you find that differently.
But-
I would think that would just go to the city council and presumably they are still interested in all the same things that you're interested in.
But the easement portion here is blank right now. So I just know I would not feel comfortable unless I know those requirements were in the easement.
And that would be an appropriate recommendation to the city
Mhm.
council to
Mhm.
make sure that they have an easement agreement with the property owner.
Exactly, because it's 8 feet wide, so you're not even gonna get a piece of equipment on
Right.
that 8 feet. So they're gonna need to be on the other guy's property if they have to replace it.
Right. And I totally agree with what Commissioner Wagstaff is saying. So that's one of my main concerns. And then the other one, sort of following on with Mr. Holmes is saying, is I'm curious to know where we got the 7,500, because that does seem low.
So
to
there was
me.
an appraisal prepared. I don't know that if you've all asked, maybe we didn't give it as a copy and maybe, I don't know that it was something, I'm not sure if it's publicly available or not. But it was based on comparative sales so that they didn't look at the value, the increase in value that it might give to the property. They just looked at how much is per square foot is property worth in Larkspur, and the comparisons were based on recent sales such as 21 Chevy Chase, that really steep,
Mhm.
hard to develop lot, which the recent lots, and also I think even the one in Villa Paz, 360 Villa Paz, those recent property sales have been really low because they're so difficult to develop. So just taking those numbers and putting them onto this very, very tiny strip of land results in a very small amount of.
And is that something that's set by statute or?
That's a question
ordinance?
that hopefully Brandy Robinson can answer, 'cause I
And-
don't know the answer.
Following on for that, I mean, if you look at the market price of that piece of property, the entire property, whenever they bought it, a portion of their land was owned by the city.
Right.
Now they pay $7,500 and now they own the entirety of their land. The fact that a portion of their land was owned by the city would have been reflective in whatever the market value of that price was when they bought it. But by only paying 7,500, that obstruction or encumbrance, I guess you could call it, on that property goes away.
Right.
So it increases the market value of that house
I-
by significantly a big amount.
I wouldn't disagree, but I
So-
don't see it as a general plan consistency finding. And it seems
That's
something that the city
true.
council would consider when they're considering the agreement. And maybe there might be statutory reasons or
Uh-huh.
something that sets how a property is going to be valued that Randy would.
Right.
Rather
It seems
than-
like
no.
if we're trying to act in the interest of the city, this might be something we need to pay attention to.
Yeah, we may have more flexibility in terms of setting valuation based on the statutory scheme. I can look into that for you. I don't have that information on the top of my head.
It seems like applying a lot with a 50 or 75% slope may not be an apples to apples comparison.
Yeah.
Right.
I think so flat.
Right. And that 21 Chevy Chase, I think it was along the front of the property, whereas this is right through the middle of the property. So it's quite a big difference from my perspective. So I'd love to find out, look more into that, look more into what the easement says, or at least have some conditions for that.
Difficult. It's difficult to appraise land. I think I've found that with other projects throughout my planning years.
Uh-huh.
Is because it's hard to appraise a vacant piece of land. So comparable sales is one way to do it. And
But when you look at it in a vacuum, a small 800 square foot piece of property,
Yes.
nobody's going to buy it. But if it's breaking up the two properties that you own, it's like
Yeah.
a monopoly, right? When you own two of the greens and somebody else owns the other one,
Yeah,
there's an instant.
that's true. Although in this case, there really is only one buyer. So
unless
that
someone wanted
would.
to buy it because
Right, but
does
the fact
provide
that there's
more value to
only,
the other people.
true, but the fact that there's only one buyer would bring the property value of that strip down again, because it's really whatever that one buyer is willing to pay for it. I don't know, wouldn't a broker and appraiser be able to figure that
maybe
out?
it's been appraised and that's what the value
Oh,
is come up by an
And that's-
appraisal looking at comparative sales.
and that's in here? No?
I don't think that we
No.
included the appraisal.
Okay,
Yeah, I think what you just said is true. It's only valuable to that property owner.
Mhm.
Nobody else is going to buy a
Right.
wide piece of property.
That's got a drain on it.
Yeah, and very skinny house.
But they do have their carport is already encroaching on it.
Right.
So it feels to me like they're being rewarded for doing something that they shouldn't have done.
That's an,
Well, the city approved the carport.
They did?
That the plan for the carport didn't indicate that the city lot was there. And whoever reviewed that plan
Oh, wow.
didn't, I guess, look carefully at what the lot actually was like.
Okay.
So it was approved, the carport itself was approved with a permit, the structure above it and the stairs behind it, we have no permits for.
I've got a question about some of the like the ADU, current ADU laws or sort of ministerial review or by right rules. So it was my understanding that
where are you moving on to the next topic?
no, I'm talking about this one. So yeah, sorry. So say this is all one contiguous property, or there are no more like setback restrictions, which has prevented them from building, or maybe it prevents the property from being further developed right now. So my
I see what you
concern was
mean.
about
Something
some of the
different, yeah.
heritage trees there. So say this is all one contiguous property and those setback restrictions are now solved or gone. Is there anything that the city can do if they wanted to come and put an ADU over those heritage trees? Because I didn't think that we could.
Well, the city has a heritage tree preservation ordinance that would give us the right to ask or ensure that it doesn't hurt the heritage trees. So for example, just building on not a continuous foundation, but some type of pier and grade beam or something that would, like digging to make sure that it's avoiding the major roots of the trees. We would still be able to protect the trees in that way.
And that
Because
trumps
that's
the
within our-
ADU law? Does that, sorry, but.
Right,
does
yeah,
that-
that's basically.
Yeah, does that
like-
trump ADU or does
No.
ADU trump?
It does because we have this agreement. So the agreement has the same provision in it that says they have to,
So it's recorded against the deed of their property. or
Right.
Something like that.
so otherwise you're allowed to remove heritage trees to build your ADU. That's correct.
But we could effectively prevent that through, we can't do that on normal
Sales
properties.
agreement would protect the trees.
Right, okay. We, something that we don't typically get to do on most properties
And
because,
that is protecting
yeah,
the trees.
right. I just was curious about how the ADU law and that would.
But in the end, the one document that stands, that would be recorded on title would be just the easement.
There would be
Yeah.
a deed restriction as well regarding the protection of the spotted owls and the heritage trees.
Sorry, repeat that. So I missed the first part of your comment.
We'd record a deed restriction as well.
Okay.
And the deed restriction specifically speaks to the protection of the heritage trees and the spotted owls.
Got it.
Okay.
And
Is-
then
Does anybody else have any more questions?
I was also curious, was Mr. Holmes volunteering his time to look into why it was originally a fee simple and not an easement? Because if he is, maybe we have nothing to lose by having him do that.
Yeah, I had asked the city clerk to look for minutes. They're available downstairs. And maybe there's some other documents that he'd be able to find. Just from the documents I found, there wasn't any
Nothing.
indication of anything, but the minutes are not available for us to look at other than in a special room downstairs.
Oh. In my thought is if he's volunteering his time, maybe there's nothing to lose by just having him take the time to do it. And if he finds something, there's no harm in.
My thought is that property owner probably didn't want to own a drainage easement of the cities. Like it was probably better for them to not own the property once the drainage easement's put inside it.
Mhm.
Like they
the
may not have
liability.
owned the property on the other side. It might have just been a sliver on the side of their lot that their house might have been flooded by all the drainage and they were happy to have the city fix it. Who knows?
Okay.
I couldn't find anything in newspapers or anything. I did search to see if there's anything else that was publicly available, like about what might have been going on and couldn't find anything.
Okay.
Okay. So any further questions?
Question.
Do we want to like deliberate this or, how do you all feel about voting on this tonight?
I feel like we need more information.
We'll start
now.
from, sorry.
Sorry, go.
Oh.
I'd really like a little bit more info
Mm.
before deciding it to go ahead with it. I think something's only worth this what somebody will pay for it. And probably in fairness, it's not worth anything to anybody else. So maybe it's okay to not, make it a $50,000 8-foot wide strip, but as far as the rest of it, I think I would kind of like to know what kind of condition the pipe is in before, before turning it over to somebody else, but I don't know whether we can put that in.
But I guess because I don't want, this has been, not your fault, this has been going on a long time, but this has been a long application for the property owner. And I wouldn't mind getting information from the city attorney as to why that would matter. Because if we have an easement, we would have the same access rights to it. Like, does it matter to the city? I don't know that the city attorney would be advising the city council to sell it if there was a problem with access, if they have an easement versus owning the property. Or maybe they have a comment as to what liability we have owning the property versus,
But what
Having an easement.
I'm getting at is, you have an 8-foot wide strip that's an easement that theoretically the city can work on. A big piece of equipment is way, so how does this,
but
can the
that's the
city
case,
work?
that's the case today. You have
Yeah,
an 8-foot wide piece of property.
yeah, suppose that's true.
Did we have a comment? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, hi, sorry, Bill Hansel, building official. I just want to comment, I also happen to be a manager of the Alto Sanitary District, and so we have this issue all the time with sewer easements on properties where the district has to do lateral repairs. So as Elise is indicating, regardless of the condition, whether it's, easement or city property, when there has to be access, it becomes, the city is responsible for that access, equipment wise or activity wise, in terms of the repairs on that line. But whether or not it's an easement or a city owned property is kind of not really relevant. So I think in this, and I'm commenting on this as well because I was involved in some of the questions about the conditions from a code enforcement case of the structure above and trying to deal with this odd condition. So it definitely has not helped us that the condition as it is has not helped us with the ownership problem. So I think the easement would solve a lot of that across the board.
But who is the responsible person for the carport and in other words, if you have to go through there to replace the pipe?
Yeah, well, that's again, that's not an uncommon situation where either there are existing structures that were built with or without permits over the years over, city, or in my case with Alto District utilities. Usually the agency that has to deal with the pipe tries to accommodate as best as possible, that. But if in an extreme condition, and I don't think this would apply here, but in an extreme condition, you might have a situation where somebody built a substantial structure that affected the pipe, and therefore, the agency might have a claim against, the owner. In this case, that hasn't really happened because it was city property, so I don't really see that coming about.
And the easement agreement, according to Public Works, would preclude them from building anything over the pipe that would preclude their access. So it would potentially stay similar to what's there today so that they could always access the pipe from above.
So what do you suggest we do with it?
My suggestion is that you find it in conformance with the general plan, because I can't find any reason with the conditions about the trees and the owl that it's not in conformance with the general plan. If you can point to something in the general plan.
Yeah, I guess our scope here is a little bit narrower than Mr. Holmes' comments or some of our questions today. Like I think we all have some other, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but our questions about, the cost of it, how the ADU laws might trickle down, the heritage trees, why we own it instead of having an easement, repair and maintenance access. Those are not,
Or they're
we're
things the
finding,
city council will consider.
right, and we're just saying it's a residential
Does
area.
this decision violate the general plan?
Right.
But we
If
can
they were
make
to sell it,
recommendations to city council.
right?
So for example, like I would love to make a recommendation to city council, include in whatever notes that we give them that any easement that's drafted is clear as to the maintenance responsibility, access responsibility, keeping it clear. Because when I went down there, it was just full of leaves. So it wasn't being looked after very well. I mean, it just seemed like if there was a rainstorm, I mean, it's summer now, but if it was a rainstorm, it would just clog up. So those responsibilities, I don't know if that falls on the owner or if that falls on the city having to go get access there and keep it clear.
Yeah, some of that, well, it's default to the city's attorney, but to a certain degree, the access that public agencies has to those are sort of by right, regardless of, you want to have it neat and tidy in terms of the agreement, but even if it's not, as currently exists in many other locations, the agency still has the right
Okay.
and access, but not only to the access, but then also has, exposure to the liability if the city doesn't perform, those, or exposes the property in some kind of way that it shouldn't. So there's sort of uh, a lot of things that are just by right of the job that the city has to take care of, either stormwater management or waste management or water distribution or any of the agencies that are relative to those things.
Is access by right too?
Yeah, in sort of a hardball case,
Okay.
yeah, we have, so for example, in an extreme condition like with sanitary, for example, because it gets into the health and safety code, it's, an owner of a property with an easement might have certain objections, or there might be some kind of an agreement or precedent that they sort of point to as saying, well, you can't do this or can't do that. But at the end of the day, if there's a health and safety concern, it defaults to that and the rights of the agency to implement what's required for health and safety purposes.
So who's asking for this? Is it that, are we trying to sell it to them or are they
The
trying to
owner-
buy it from us?
The owner is trying to buy it from the city.
Okay, so they're actually trying to buy it from us. So I don't know, maybe I'm missing something here, but it just seems like we have an opportunity to put together a document that has all these conditions that you're not relying on what's by right and it's a hardball situation. It's like here, it's very clear what the responsibilities are. Somebody buying that property in the future can see it recorded on title.
Yeah.
So they can just read it and say, oh, when I buy this piece of property, or if I live there, then I have to do X, Y, and Z on this drainage piece. I can't build on it. I have to keep it clear.
That would be the purview of the agreement of the attorney,
Right.
not so much the planning commission. So I think
Right.
that's the
And I
point.
guess.
And I don't think
Yeah.
that's lost on anyone.
Okay.
Because that's a standard,
Great.
dotting the i's and crossing the t's for.
That's great. And you just, when I
Sales
saw the
agreement.
document, it had like a blank there for the easement. I was like,
I hope that helps. Sorry.
yes, it does. No, thank you. So I would like to say that if we have those requirements very clear, then I don't have an objection to having an easement versus ownership.
Yeah, and we do have a draft of that agreement that we come up against problems with, although the city does have rights for access and maintenance of things like this by right, or by its sovereign powers. It is better, obviously, to have everything in writing and recorded against the property, so that we can just reference that document when we need to access and maintain and repair the the easement. So we do have a draft of that document, and that's the intention, certainly, that council will be reviewing.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Hall, do you have any comments?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think mine are roughly the same. It's, you know, in terms of consistency with the general plan, which I think is our narrow purview tonight. I don't think I can find anything that, you know, finds it inconsistent with the general plan, but I have some general concerns that I trust staff will bring up to the city council during that meeting. Is that, I mean, do we need to make a motion with formal recommendations to?
And there's a resolution you have to
council.
adopt. You can add provisions to it if you want to give direction to the city council. But I'm sure they will consider all those same issues.
Okay.
We could, do we also want to reference anything about them having, city council to at least discuss the monetary value on this? It's not us, it'll be them to discuss it or look at it.
I don't, I don't really want to get into the monetary value, honestly.
Well, we don't, but
Yeah.
we could ask city council to, if they, that's what.
Sure.
It's not included, the price isn't included in our resolution, so.
No,
Correct.
but I think what we can do.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I would hope that there'd be a report that would go
Will there be?
to city council with the resolution.
Yes, there will be a
Okay.
report that the Public Works Department
Okay.
will present to them with the proposal for them to consider for the sale of the property. Like, as Liam says, you're just giving them advice as to whether or not selling this piece of property is consistent with the general plan.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, in that case, can we?
Maybe it's the real estate lawyer in me, but I just want to. Yes, that's exactly what. I think we should make a motion but I would like to just add that they make sure that the terms of the easement contain all the required, which I'm sure the city attorney.
You should be the one
Yeah.
who makes the
Yeah,
motion.
Okay.
I think I'm comfortable with a motion with some of that stuff and with you know, the things that we talked about, like you know, some of the concerns that we have, that maybe we should address those in a motion so that we make sure they get discussed at the city council meeting. Is that?
And if they're going to get discussed anyway, that's great. I don't think we have anything to lose. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to help me with the, okay, I'll make a motion to adopt Planning Commission Resolution number 2025-01 entitled, and I'm going to read all of this, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Larkspur, California, making general plan conformance findings under the Government Code sections 65402 regarding the sale of certain real property, APN 021092113 between 320 and 330 West Baltimore Avenue, including recommendations to City Council to consider the terms of the proposed easement agreement to include appropriate rights for the city in terms of maintenance, access, etc. And you had a couple. Oh, the owls. What were they?
I think that's already
It's
in
in
there.
here.
That's in here already. Okay,
Sir.
that's already included. That's already included, right? And
Do we want to add anything about consideration of like how these
And-
ADU laws will affect development at the site? Or
And to-
that's recorded against the property.
yes,
so-
and to ensure that the easement is recorded on title and also includes any clarification of AD. Well, what can you help me with the language?
No, I
there?
think we covered that. It's
We
recorded
covered
in the
that?
title, so the trees and the owls are recorded against the
Okay.
titles.
Okay. Okay, that's it.
I'll second it.
Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Wagstaff,
Yes.
Commissioner Campbell,
Yes.
Commissioner Chalmers.
Yes.
And Commissioner Hull.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. And we're moving on to item B, the accessory dwelling unit ordinance. So today
Right.
we will review a draft accessory dwelling unit ordinance and provide a recommendation to the city council. Can we have the staff report, please?
Over.
Here.
Oh, my presentation. Oh, here it is. I found it right there. Oh, thanks. Okay, so we're recommending modifications to the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, and that's why I invited the city attorney to attend tonight, because at prior hearings, revisions of the ADU ordinance, you always have a lot of questions about some of the state law regulations that the city doesn't have a lot of discretion to modify. And there might be more tonight, so I invited them to attend. The primary reason for the update is to update state law code sections because the state law the state moved where the ADU regulations are in state law. So we need to update ours to be consistent with that. And then we attempted to simplify the text as much as possible because that was one of the directions the planning commission had the last time this was here, but it's just really difficult to do that. We found, look for other jurisdictions that might have a more simplified ordinance, but there are none that have been approved by the state. So and some of them are lacking information that is required to be included. So we did the best we could, but I don't know that we can simplify it anymore. And we couldn't find any examples to draw from that were better, that were also considered adequate by the state. We added definitions that are included in state law, and then also took out definitions from the regulations section and put them in the definitions section, just again to try to keep the text as simple as possible. There's additional information on the timeline for building department review, and that's taken from state law. The by right ADU section is made consistent with state law. The current regulations allow some by right status to attached units that actually the city doesn't need to provide. So this has reduced, or it's not making it more difficult. They're still allowed, but it's making it consistent with state law and not giving anything additional than the city has to provide for the by right units. And these are the ones we're calling by right units, the ones that are under a certain specific section where the city must approve them and really can't apply any local regulations to those units. And then it also adds to those by right units the ability for multifamily sites to have 8 detached ADUs, because that's another recent state law that we needed to incorporate into our regulations. The proposed regulations move the JADU, the junior accessory dwelling unit regulations, out of the definitions and into just a standalone section. So it's easier to find what rules apply to junior accessory dwelling units. And then there's a new section that addresses legalization of units that were built prior to January 1st, 2020, because the state requires the city to approve those units with very minimal requirements. So essentially we are checking those to see that they meet basic health and safety standards, but we can't require them to meet the building code. And then the FAR and lot coverage bonus provisions are recommended to be amended. This is a special Larkspur ordinance that allows the property owners to increase the size of their primary unit if they add one accessory dwelling unit. And the way it's currently drafted, it only applies to existing residences that are adding, and it doesn't apply to new construction. And we don't think that was the intent of the Planning Commission. It just was the way the wording was changed with one of the last amendments. So this way, the same rules apply to someone who's just adding on to their house and also someone who's building new from construction. They get to build a larger main residence. And the point of that regulation was to encourage people to come in with their ADUs from the start rather than coming through the planning commission, getting approval, and then coming back in to get the ADU that didn't have any review. So at least the planning commission had the chance of seeing the whole project together. There's a definition of attached, and one of the amendments I'll be recommending is taking it out of the actual ordinance text. There's a section 2 of the ordinance that should be deleted. There's a definition of attached that would just apply to accessory dwelling units. And that is to try to prevent the situation that we saw here at 21 Chevy Chase, where the unit is detached from the residence. It's only attached by the deck structure and the roof above. And so then it's allowed higher heights than the city needs to require because it's considered attached. And there's nothing in the state law that says we can't define what attached is. So we've attempted to make an attached requirement that for horizontal additions, they have to have a shared wall. And for vertical additions, then they could share a roof structure. So currently you could share a roof structure and be considered attached. If you don't like that and would rather have these units that are not really attached, but attached by arbors or trellises in order to encourage more ADUs and taller ADUs, that's fine. We could just delete that section. And then there's these certain units that we have to approve without any sort of standards. And then there's units, if they don't meet those state requirements, the city does have some ability to have some regulation over them. And currently Larkspur allows larger accessory dwelling units than the state, or we could limit it. So we allow units up to 1,200 square feet in size. Larkspur doesn't have to allow units that large. We could limit them to 850 square feet for a 1-bedroom and 1,000 square feet for a 2-bedroom. But we've maintained the larger square foot size because there could be really large lots that couldn't have a larger ADU and it might fit well on their larger site. They would still be within their floor area ratio. And then Larkspur also has a special regulation that requires conformance with the city's regulations if the unit is removed, and we're maintaining that. So if someone, for example, was over floor area and then decided to take out the kitchen, then they would have to reduce the size of their house or come in for a variance to get approval of that floor area ratio exception. And then the city also requires ADUs that are attached to historic structures to meet Secretary of Interior standards, and that's not something that's required under state law. And then for these units that are not the special state by right units, the city also has architectural standards for materials and colors. We require the units to match the primary residence. We require them to have shielded exterior lighting, and then there's some limitations on window placement. So this proposed ordinance still maintains those local sections. And if you wanted to add any other objective standards, the city could do that. So we're recommending tonight just that you hold a public hearing and feel free to ask the city attorney any questions you have about the existing regulations and the state laws that already apply or any changes that you'd like to make to the ordinance. And then we recommend that you delete section 2 of the actual ordinance because it was a older draft and it's now the accessory dwelling unit regulations have their own definition of attached, and we're not touching the definition of attached that's in the main code because of any unintended consequences that might cause. And then also to add under section, it's currently called section 3, to add additional text under 18.08.255 floor area that says the floor area is measured as defined in chapter 18.23, as that makes the second units would not have the same exceptions that homes have for floor area. So for example, a home, as we've seen recently, you could have a huge basement area that doesn't count as floor area. And so currently that would be allowed for an accessory dwelling unit too. You could have an 800 square foot accessory dwelling unit with another 800 square feet of, let's say, basement or some a low story that doesn't count as floor area under current regulations. So the way it's drafted now, we just measure the floor of the ADU. So if it's 800 square feet, it's 800 square feet. If it has an 800 square foot basement, it's 1,600 square feet. So it's just measuring the actual area of the ADU, and there's no exceptions for floor area like you would normally have for the primary residence. If you'd like to give everyone those exceptions to allow larger ADUs, you could do that, and we could modify the definition of floor area for the accessory dwelling units.
Does the floor, if it's below 50% below grade, does that count?
It would still count as ADU
That's what I
area,
wanted.
right?
Okay. Any questions for staff?
Yes.
I have so I'm not a big fan of ADUs, but if I'm understanding it correctly, you can have up to 3 units,
You could have up to 4 units,
counting the house.
correct?
So basically, you could have a 4-unit apartment building with 2 parking places.
You don't even need parking, probably. You could, if you had a house with no parking, you could probably add 3 additional units with no parking.
It's
Crazy.
But that's, again, not up to us, right? That's the state law. Maybe
Yeah,
the-
that's just the way the state has written the law.
So just out of curiosity, what happens if we say no?
We
we
could be
won't do it.
sued by the state. They could shut down the building department. There's a lot of things they could do. They could penalize us monetarily.
So some of these changes, or the changes that we're making now, are these being initiated because the state has come to you with comments,
So
or you're just seeing this
New
in
s-
the?
State law, new state law passed that changed some of the rules that we need to incorporate into our regulations. And then also the state has made comments on our prior ordinance, which is now it's been changed a few times, but there's still some things we need to address, like the code sections weren't updated.
So when did that happen? Because I know you had some back and forth with the state when we were originally drafting this, where we were drafting it, they would send it to the state, they would provide commentary to come back,
Right.
then you would update it. I know there was a lot of that, and then we finally passed
Most
it,
of
like with the
those-
housing element,
yeah,
we
ma'am.
did something similar.
Most of those changes have been corrected other than the code numbers. I think all the other corrections were made. So some of these are just trying to make it maybe a little bit more clear. And then others are just to address the new state law sections.
So
like
somebody
unit.
at the state level is still got eyes on the
Right,
code.
they periodically ask Alex when we're going to send it over to them.
Interesting. Okay. I was just trying to understand the process behind the
Yeah.
scenes. Yeah. Okay. And then following on from Brock's question, so when it says by right ADUs and by right JADUs, it goes it means one of 4 delineated types of ADUs. What's the 4?
So they've delineated these 4 ADUs that the city just has to approve. And if they meet certain conditions that the state has set forth. So one is a new detached ADU, that's of a certain size and height. And then also units that are converted from existing space. So if someone has a garage or a basement area or just rooms in their house that they want to convert to an accessory dwelling unit, and that unit could be of any size, the city just has to approve it. And then for multifamily property,
Oh,
the city has to approve a certain number of detached units for every site, and then also allow multifamily property to convert existing space to ADUs. So there's those four types of units, if they meet the parameters that the state has set, the city just has to approve. We can't apply any sort of design criteria or setbacks other than what the state.
So when it says 4 types of ADU, it's detached ADU, like an interior ADU, a multi-unit ADU,
And then the multi-unit detached ADU.
and okay. I see. I just. I actually thought what you did to the JDU language was made it a lot clearer.
Oh, good.
So that was one so that was, I thought to me, I have not actually read, I have not read this entire thing. Do we have to, do we have to do something on that tonight, or are we just asking questions?
I mean, if you're prepared to recommend approval of it, it could move forward,
Oh,
but we also have the city attorney here if you have questions, and then could return if you have modifications.
Maybe we should open it up for public comments.
sure.
Anybody in the audience have a public comment on this item? Anybody on Zoom?
Yes, there's one hand on Zoom, number ending in 1402.
James Holmes, Larkspur. This has some good catches. I think the attachment requirement is good, and I don't think we should require, or we should allow larger ADUs than the state requires, because the state is already front loading us massively on this. My concern was that when I read this, it wasn't clear to me which changes were required by state law versus were just guidance by the Department of State Department of Housing, or were actually looser than the state law requires. I don't think we should be looser than the state law requires, given the extent to which the state law has already eroded our prerogatives. Listening to the staff report, it seemed like there wasn't, I didn't catch anything which was definitely looser than what state law requires, except possibly the ADU size on new construction, and I see the rationale there. But I would just like it to be clear on whether or not these changes include things that are both not mandated by the state and looser than the state requires. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else on Zoom? Okay, thanks. We'll close the public comment
Do we want
portion.
to get that question up?
But yeah, I think we should definitely get that. I was trying to check all the boxes here, but
Thank
yeah,
you.
does our
City.
attorney have
I mean,
any?
the size limit, we are more generous than what the state requires. And then the ADU, this additional square footage for the main residence is more generous than what the state requires in a sense. So the city's granting a bonus for this reason that we know that applicants can come and do the ADU anyway. And so there's a reason why you're granting the bonus, because we have to still give them the 800 square foot ADU. But that is giving them a bonus that the city doesn't need to give them.
Sure, yeah.
The other ones I was trying to say with ours are, so most of the other rules we have are, could be, I wouldn't say they're seen as restrictive, but like the design guidelines, those aren't required by the city.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really the size that's more generous and the bonus that's more generous.
And on JADUs, it says no more than 500 square feet, and they can share a bathroom with the primary residence.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
That's mandated by state law.
Okay.
Does our attorney Robinson have any comments on that last sort of public comment?
Yeah, I think Elise covered that well. I think for the most part, with the exclusion of the two size requirements that Elise mentioned, the idea is to bring the ordinance in line with state law and to clarify the language, not to go over and above what state law is required. So the vast majority of changes are not, do not exceed state law requirements.
So just so I'm still trying to understand what is allowed in a what I would call a worst case scenario. So you're allowed 1,000 square foot ADU. You're allowed a 500 square foot JADU. And then one more, right? So, and none of that counts in your floor area?
We have to, so a JADU is created within existing space so that it's already in the floor
So
area.
you've taken that away from your house
And then
theoretically.
a new attached or detached unit, we have to allow at least 800 square feet. And for the new interior, like ones that are converted from interior space, there's no size limit. So if someone had a 5,000 square foot basement, that's probably not common, but say 1,500 square foot basement, they could convert that to an ADU. There's no size restriction on something that's created within existing space.
So
So I guess worst case scenario is someone has an attached
yeah,
ADU.
that's what I'm after.
They have an attached ADU, they add a junior accessory dwelling unit, they convert existing space to an accessory dwelling unit, and then they add a new detached accessory dwelling unit. So potentially, I guess you could have four, is that four? It's still three. It's still three? Three.
Two
is the house.
detached, a JADU and a,
Oh, and a JADU. So
Four.
four. Yeah, four is the worst case scenario for a single family.
And all that gets deducted from the lot cover, the lot
The
coverage.
new,
is
so
that-
it's only really the new, or the first 800 square feet is not counted towards floor area the way the city has the regulations written. And then, but any of the other units would
are
count towards.
counted. Okay.
that's for a new
Right.
build.
And coverage, that,
And we only grant the bonus of 800 square feet. So if someone wanted to do 1,200 square feet, they would have issues with lot coverage if they were already over.
But am I understanding that we actually don't have to grant that bonus of the
Right.
800?
We don't have to give a bonus to the main residence of 800 square feet,
So why?
but
do
we have to allow the ADU to be built. So
Mhm.
it's an encouragement.
Oh,
I
so
think it's to encourage people to come here the first time with everything because they're not coming here with a house that's maxed out the floor area ratio and then in
And
a
then
year
come
coming
back
in
for the.
for a by right ADU that doesn't involve us at all.
I remember discussing this a while ago. Is that
That was the reason, I think that was the driving factor for the bonus was, well, I think at first it was to encourage ADUs. Now it's seen as, well, they can build it anyway, so why not just let the main house have more square footage so that they're not that they'll include it with their project.
And I think it's a sort of, for me as well, another benefit of that would be like courtesy to our neighbors. All the construction's happening at once instead of finish the main house, close out the permit and then start another,
Yeah.
project, right?
And it does encourage development of ADUs in the sense that if someone was below the floor area, let's say 800 square feet below, and they knew they were not gonna, that's the only square footage they have left for their house, they may not build an ADU because now their house can't be expanded. So someone might opt to do an ADU knowing, oh, I could still do that 800 square feet to my house. I'm not precluding myself from a future addition. So it's intended to be encouraging of ADUs in that sense.
Mhm.
I think it doesn't change, for me anyway, I don't think that changes the end result of you're gonna have a house with an ADU.
Mm.
Whether it goes through us the first time and we see it all together or whether we just see the house and an ADU comes after, it's
Right.
gonna be the same result,
Right.
whether we give that, bonus or not. Right? That's my,
Yes.
maybe we should do any other comments or questions for staff on this one?
Here's a slight random one. I was a little confused between high quality transit corridor with a bus that goes every 15 minutes and a major transit stop with the bus every 20 minutes. So what's
Yeah.
the difference between those two?
The bus just has to drive by, it doesn't have to stop.
Yeah, it just.
Other than 5
makes it
minutes.
More difficult for us to we have to keep referring back the definitions and things like that. So They're just in different sections of the code.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if they made them consistent.
So is that taken directly from the state law?
Right, so some rules are based on major transit stop and some rules are based on high quality transit corridor. Or they're both in there in one section, but and then they changed those rules. So it used to be 15 minutes, now it's 20 minutes.
Okay, so I just wanted to check, there's nothing that we're doing at the city level, that's coming
No,
down on us,
that's
this whole
coming down from the
20
state.
minutes, okay. Okay. Um, yeah, I had a question in the this might be the wrong section number 1823.040I. This is the correction of, okay, so this is where somebody builds an ADU and the city goes in to sign off on it and they notice, this is what I'm assuming happened in the past. And you noticed a violation somewhere else, you could require those violations to be corrected. And now you're saying that the city cannot have those violations corrected. Is that a new provision or is
there's
that always in there?
Two sections. This one addresses just, in general, the state law doesn't want us, we can't require corrections to other non-conforming additions or anything wrong with the primary dwelling unit. So because those are all seen as penalizing someone creating a second unit or making it more difficult.
Right. So if you go into the property to approve an ADU, you
And-
can't
And we
look,
see the houses.
yeah, you can't look at the house. So my question was, is this new this time? Or was this always in here and you just moved it around?
I can't remember on that one specifically if it was always in the state law and we just put it in here.
Okay. But I'm assuming that doesn't apply if somebody's building an ADU, which is what we're seeing a lot now, is new homes with an ADU at the same time. So this wouldn't even apply because you would be looking at the new home as well.
We would, right.
Yeah.
Does that apply to, you mentioned like an existing accessory structure that's being converted to an ADU? Doesn't have to comply with building codes, just health and safety codes?
If an existing accessory structure that's not already illegally converted to an ADU is coming in for a permit, we can require it to meet building code. If someone's illegally converted it before January 1st, then no, we can't apply the building code.
Okay. But that's state law, right? Again,
Right.
right? There's not much flexibility that we have on that
No,
front.
they're telling us we can't apply the building code.
Yeah.
And so I understand the non-by right ADUs. So these are the ones that are over the 800, 500 by right limits. Is that my understanding? That if you're coming in to build an ADU that's more than 800 square feet,
Like a new detached ADU over 800 square feet.
this is not a by right one anymore. This is now
It's by right in a sense, but we still can apply certain standards to it.
okay. So do the standards that you are now allowed to apply, because the by right ones, the only standard you can apply is the setbacks,
Essentially, in height.
right, and height. And so the non-by right ones, do they have to comply with the rest of our city code or just the few that you were talking about in your
Just the-
presentation?
Just the few that we're talking about,
Also, even those are pretty loose.
right?
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, let's bring it back for, I guess, more deliberations, more formal. We'll start down with Commissioner Hall.
So I guess, so we need to discuss it for a recommendation to approve it. Okay, so, because I was like, we're not actually formally adopting an ordinance. We're recommending that city council adopts it.
Right, but they rely on us, I guess, as planning commission.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely clearer. It's still muddy. But it's like, as long as it doesn't make my eyes water too much, I think I'm okay with it. It's definitely something I've been reading and helping me fall asleep the last couple of nights. I know way more about ADUs and JADUs in Larkspur than I ever wanted to. I have no changes.
Okay, Commissioner Chalmers.
Is the expectation that we approve it tonight? Is that what the, or is the expectation that we just ask questions because city attorney is here?
Well, we set it up so you could approve it tonight or recommend approval of it to the city council. If you're prepared to do that.
Oh. I don't know. And you know,
We could, I mean, we could continue it.
no, but you know, I'm going to continue it and do what? I mean, a lot of this is pushed back. You're right.
Let's let the city council deal.
I mean, that's one way. There's a little part of me that wants to sit here and just rewrite the entire code and make it crystal clear and simple and easy to follow. But
That's
I'm
what code is.
There are professionals that do that.
but there are other professionals that do that, and I can't, you know, really don't have the time to do that. So, I mean, I don't know. Let's see what
All right.
Commissioner Wagstaff has to say while I just look at this again.
No, I would say we should send it on to the city council. Basically, my eyes crossed too, trying to read all this stuff. You know, I think there's so much wrong with this process. But I think that has to be taken up at the state. Now, whether the city would be willing to buck the state, because I bet there are other people out there that feel the same way. But the possibility, it doesn't, you know, if there was a way that I like the idea of JADUs and ADUs, but not without parking and not without other amenities that make it work. And all it does is it's gonna crowd the streets. And, you know, we talk about the small town character and what Larkspur is about, and this is gonna change it. So that's the problem I've got with it.
Mhm. And to add to that, I think sometimes we have cases come through where people are building an ADU and it's clearly not an ADU for a separate person to live in. It's just added square footage to a house that they're trying to build. And I feel like our hands are tied and there's nothing we can do about it, which I personally don't like at all in those situations.
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel similarly, except that I appreciate that, you know, we have a housing problem in California and in Marin, and this is a potential solution for that. And so I think it's, you know, we can, there are certainly concerns that I have with it in terms of sort of the character and what's possible to build on a lot, but you know, bigger picture, I can understand the goal that the state has is to increase the housing supply. You know, there are people that would love to live here but can't afford to, and it's kind of a shame. So,
how many ADUs have we now approved? Do you know? Since the last time we looked at the number of ADUs we approved was during the housing element discussions, and then was about 50, I think.
I mean, there's a lot. They keep coming in all the time. I don't know offhand. But I could come back with the numbers to tell you where we're
I'd
at.
be curious. Because ideally, in an ideal world,
It keeps increasing and increasing and increasing every year.
And you would see, like on Nextdoor, for example, a lot of like rentals for 1,000, you know, cheap rentals because people are trying to rent out the ADUs, and that was the intent. But I don't see that. So go ahead.
I have a friend visiting. He's in an ADU.
Oh yeah, okay.
It's $600 a night or something.
So in those, and that's where it's working. Or when there was somebody that came in and wanted to put a teacher in, that's the kind of story that you'd like
well,
to
that's
hear.
sounds like a short-term rental, right? That's
Yeah.
not the goal of
That's true. Yeah, it's only a short term, but yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Sir.
Again, Bill Hansel, Chief Building Official. Just to comment, I don't know the number of the applications, but they are, increasing. And I will say that we, since code enforcement is within our department, we do, both with the code enforcement efforts as well as the building permit reviews, go out of our way to make sure that there aren't ADUs that are, not misused, or for example, the connections that previously had been allowed, we're not allowing those, we're catching those, we're being very explicit when the permit's approved in the documentation that this has to be, a separate entrance, that type of thing. And on the back end of things that we're finding, we're using code enforcement to address that. Also, when it comes to, regardless of the merits or the opinions of whether it's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, or whether the state, has made the right or wrong decisions, I will say that because of the incoming applications that we constantly have, it's very helpful for us to have the, our regulations correct and in the moment of the time. So, that's what I would encourage you to do, because otherwise what happens is we don't have that. It causes confusions in the applications. We'll have people coming back to us sort of pointing out how our regulations aren't correct. And that is not helping in any case, because it seems that we're not sort of adhering when we're just trying to catch up and keep up, regardless of whether it's good or bad. So,
yeah, thank you. And that's good
Thank
to
you.
hear that,
Yeah.
that people, that our building department staff is looking out for that stuff. Cause that's the kind of stuff that we talk about all the time. Like, well, it's a wall, but could easily be a door, right?
right. And it's being we're hearing the pushback on trying to keep these things, as they are, because they haven't been necessarily in the past, and because some of the changes have restricted them, both allowed more, to occur, but also sort of have are different than how they were either treated in the past, specifically in terms of, internal attachments, and agency to agency to agency are not all yet and for doing those enforcements necessarily, probably, which is not helping us, because we're trying to do it, or any other agency that's trying to, keep the intention of it being added housing and not just another way to get some extra square footage. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good to hear.
Yeah, no, that's really good to hear.
So Amy makes a good point about making sure the regulations are correct. So if we do get it done tonight, that's good.
Yeah, I think our from what I'm hearing, our issues are not so much with, having our laws reflect state laws, or our ordinance reflect state laws, but with sort of the overall process. And, each of us may have our own separate concerns and, issues with these, or, but yeah, I mean, I think, in my opinion, I think we should match what the state says, because their laws are going to govern, and it makes it more confusing for everyone. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make me when we have those meetings and our hands are tied, and we can't review the ADU portion of the building. It's frustrating, because some of those you can definitely tell that it's not an ADU or a JADU, but that's where we are, right? So
Okay.
So a question for staff is, are you comfortable with the rewrite? In other words,
Well, I still don't think it's clear, but really it's just so difficult to make it clear. So hopefully there'll be handouts or other things that can make it a little bit easier for the public to understand. But I think it addresses state law, and it's in compliance, and it's not it's not being too generous, but also it's very easy to put in a second unit.
yeah. Okay.
okay. If there are any more, not barring any more comments, sounds like we may be ready for a
Yeah.
motion.
I'm just looking at some language here. Like, can we just make a really tiny change, like 1823 070 B3? Can you just change it to the JADU shall be contained entirely within the walls? Only just to conform with the rest of the language.
1823, sorry.
B3.
070?
It doesn't change the intent at all. Just correct. Just I'm trying not to read it because I'll start making little corrections. So
And sorry, which section under that one?
1823070.
Oh, shall for 3?
Yeah, yeah. The JDU shall be contained entirely within the walls. And then 6, maybe you
Do you,
could say.
do you catch that, Ms. Robinson? I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah,
So under,
I'm okay with that change.
okay.
Yeah, a JDU may have a,
Shall be contained. Fine.
or JDU may have a dedicated separate bathroom or or share bathroom.
I think
could go
if we make a motion and you find something after the meeting,
I'm
that's
not gonna-
that's a
I'm gonna-
wording change.
I'm not
I
gonna.
think I'm comfortable with.
Council meeting and.
I'm not gonna make it. I'm not gonna do this. Yeah. Okay, let's make a motion before I look at this one.
All right, can we have a motion, please?
Go ahead tomorrow.
All right. Oh,
You go. She's excited to do it.
is there a number on this? So I would move approval of accessory dwelling unit ordinance, including all the various changes that have been made by the planning staff.
Do we need to call out this delete section
The
2?
delete section 2 of the ordinance and then, already
And then add our recommended text to
refer back to
18.08.255.
the section, refer back to the ADU section.
Yes.
So moved. You gotta say it. Can we have a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, and a roll call.
Commissioner Wagstaff,
Yes.
Commissioner Campbell,
Yes.
Commissioner Chalmers.
Yes.
Commissioner Hull,
Yes.
the motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to our final agenda item. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson.
Yeah,
for
we
attending.
appreciate that. And thank you to our city attorney. Moving on to 223 Magnolia Avenue. Application PLN 25-006 for design review, a setback variance, and a heritage tree removal. Can we please have the staff report?
Yes, give me just a second here. Okay, yes, good evening, planning commissioners. The item before you is PLN 25006 for 223 Magnolia Avenue. The project is just down the street here. It's kind of right at the terminus of William Avenue and kitty corner from the Lark Creek shops. And then the image on the right is the best Google Street view I could get of it. It's pretty heavily obscured by vegetation. The project proposes to demolish approximately 420 square feet of the existing first and add 5 square feet in some location for a net addition of 165 square feet and add 264 square feet to the second story. This requires approval of design review, setback variance, and tree removal permit. Here is the site plan. As a part of the project, this garage is going to be converted to an accessory dwelling unit. Residence is shown on the left here. Hard to tell, but this lighter gray is the story edition, and the darker gray having a dash outline. Second edition, all located at the rear of the structure. Now it's too much. Oh, it died.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So just to repeat, all the additions are located at the rear of the structure. And there also is a new trellis that's proposed along the front of the property along Magnolia. Here are the proposed floor plans. The first floor is mostly living area with the main bedroom and bathroom. And then the second floor is bedrooms, bathrooms, and a laundry area. And here are the elevations. The exterior materials remain the same, and you can just see the proposed second story addition on the top here on the lower right. And here are the other elevations, which I don't think you'd be able to see either of these elevations from the street. And the architect did provide some renderings for you. The property is on the Historic Resources Inventory, and it was reviewed by the Heritage Preservation Board at their June 26th hearing. At that meeting, the board voted unanimously to forward a recommendation of approval to the commission, subject to conditions of approval B through D and F through J, as noted in the historic evaluation. The two conditions A and F that they did not recommend, they would have required modifications to the stairway layout to preserve a view of the tower, which you can see here in the bottom left, or excuse me, bottom right, and also to simplify the window designs as from what they are currently proposed. The board felt that the tower and the associated gable was still visible, and that the windows as proposed fit the character of the residence, and no further modifications were necessary. So as designed, the project requires a setback variance because a part of the, well, one corner of the first story addition would be 7 foot 2 inches from the front property line, where 20 feet is the requirement. And the proposed trellis would be 9 inches from the front property line. The second story, I believe the new addition would be about 17 feet and change from that same property line, also within the setback. And from my conversations with the applicant, the trellis is asked for because tree branches commonly fall on their cars, and it also helps to serve as a sort of vertical projection of the property line. Two heritage trees are proposed for removal. There's one 66-inch circumference cedar tree that the arborist noted is a high risk of failure, and that tree is located at the corner of the property, just directly adjacent to the right-of-way. The second tree is a 50-inch circumference grapefruit tree located in the center of the property towards the creek side. And it's a grapefruit tree which is healthy but unmaintained, and the arborist recommends removal because it's become a nuisance. You have received one letter in support from a nearby neighbor, 58 Madrone. The owner did, I believe, forward me a second comment just as the meeting started that I haven't been able to send to you, but also in support. And finally, it came to my attention this morning that there is a parking issue. As the commission is likely aware from this most recent discussion, the conversion of the garage to an ADU does not require a replacement of the covered parking. So the project would result in a property with one uncovered space and one guest space, where the requirement is one guest space, or excuse me, one uncovered space and two guest spaces. So it's currently deficient by one guest space. The valuation of the project exceeds what the Larkspur Municipal Code defines as a substantial remodel, which would require the property to come into compliance with the parking requirements. So this does require approval of a parking variance, which was not included in the staff report and not noticed in the notice that went out to the public. So to that end, staff recommends that the commission hold a public hearing, consider public testimony, discuss the project, and provide feedback, and continue the application to your July 22nd, 2025 hearing to allow for staff to notice the required parking variance and to return with findings for the parking variance. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for staff at the moment?
I just have one quick one. You said that the Historic Society said they didn't like A and F. I thought it was A and E.
No, yeah, I don't hear. Yeah, okay, yes, it should be A and E, you're correct, yes.
Anything else?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
So I saw in the staff report this and in the plans that some portion of the property on the front along Magnolia is on city property, right? So the fence runs on city property.
Yes.
Okay. So at some point, I don't know if the applicant will address this or if this is a question for you. Can we just ensure that there's the required encroachment permits in place?
That's a condition of approval from the Public Works Department to
It is.
obtain a permanent encroachment for.
So there isn't one there now?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, okay, I may have more questions on that, but just want to make sure that's in place then.
Okay. Applicants have been patiently waiting. Would the applicants or your architect like to speak? And again, thanks for your patience.
Good evening. I don't have a lot to say, but I'd like to thank Alex for is it on? Yeah, for a thorough staff report. We met with Jerry Holland, the the historical consultant. The historic board gave us a unanimous thumbs up, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, I do actually.
I have one quick question. Are you gonna paint it red?
Wait, what?
Currently, no, that is not the plan. Although there is still some red paint you can see in certain areas.
Oh,
The Little Red Riding Hood house.
Yeah.
oh, it used to be red.
Okay.
I was curious, how do you how do you intend to access it once the garage is turned into an ADU? Do you still go onto that little driveway? Oh, so, and then go under the trellis? Is that the idea? And then
Yeah.
down through the front yard, front garden?
Yeah, so that's sort of our main access currently, and we actually don't park in the garage because we can't really fit in there. So we park in the driveway most of the time. And funny enough, during the winter time, with all the storms and the limbs that fall, we just park on the street, which kind of adds to street parking because we can't utilize the driveway because there's always issues with the redwoods. So we're hoping to improve some of that with a trellis to kind of block falling debris.
Got it.
Yeah. And then I wanted to just add a couple more things. We do have more support from some of our neighbors. Everyone's been out of town the last 2 weeks. But there's been verbal support, and then we've had more letters come in as of today. So we have sort of circulated this with the neighborhood. Marty and Beth Katz, who are our direct neighbor, I think at 215 Magnolia, they're in full support of the project. They actually can't see the house from their property because of all the redwood trees that kind of border between us. And in terms of the ADU, that's for family. We have 2 young kids, and grandparents don't live in the state. So when they come and visit, they're always at a hotel. So it's really to benefit family that will be visiting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you want to say anything? Okay. Oh, and then in terms of the fence,
Yeah.
that was existing when we bought the house. We bought the house in 2020, and we were surprised to see once everything was surveyed that it was put where it is. And going through the city's records, I don't see a permit that was ever issued or approved of that fence line. But it's kind of consistent with the other fences on adjacent properties. And so to kind of move it back would kind of seem unnecessary at this point.
Yeah, and it probably isn't if you put the encroachment permit in place. So as I think we would just need to ensure that that was entered into. I had a question about the trees. I saw the cypress tree was fairly old, and I could see why you want to remove that. I think the grapefruit tree, I could just see, you can see it from the road. Is that the one in the middle? Obviously, with the, I think there were a
Yeah.
couple of grapefruits on it.
Yeah.
Is there a way to save that? Like, can you prune it right? I don't know. I'm not a gardener, but could you prune it all the way down and save it? Or, because my understanding was that was a really old tree that's been around for a long time. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but I'm just curious. Can you save that?
I think my concern with the tree is the root structure is impeding on the retaining wall of the creek. And so there's kind of a maintenance issue we have with it.
Mm.
Again, the tree was existing. But the canopy is so large, the drip line goes over into the creek. And so we have a lot of debris that falls from that, and it presents a maintenance concern of, keeping that retaining wall sturdy, which would then trigger other applications with other departments. So we see it as more of a nuisance, and it's just kind of occupies a lot of exterior space that we'd like to utilize.
Okay, thank you.
Are there retaining wall? I didn't see retaining wall. There are on the creek side retaining wall.
Yeah,
Sorry,
which
must
we're
have
not
missed it.
touching.
Oh, I was gonna say, are there improvements to it? But
Yep.
it sounds like you're leaving it as is.
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comments? Anybody in the room that would like to comment? No? And anybody on Zoom?
Yes, one hand on Zoom. It's a number ending in 1402.
James Holmes, Larkspur. There is no legal or rational basis to remove the grapefruit tree. under the heritage tree ordinance. This is a traditional type of tree planted for that era, and it is very old. Lack of maintenance is not the same as hazard, which is cognizable under the tree ordinance. With respect to disease and danger of falls and proximity to structures, and there is absolutely no basis, including no basis with respect to any retaining wall in the report. And the staff in the arborist report, and the staff report says, quote, "There is no danger of falling or disease." Maintenance issue is absolutely not a basis for heritage tree removal. All trees provide present a maintenance issue. Certainly redwoods do, and something that is the need for maintenance does not make it a nuisance, and being a nuisance is not a qualification for removal under the heritage tree ordinance. So the grapefruit tree, which is very visible from the street and is a traditional part of that landscape, should be retained. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Anybody else on Zoom that has their hand raised? Okay, and then I guess I'll bring it back here for deliberations. We started down there last time. You want to kick things off?
Okay. Well, I actually have a lot of history with this house. My daughter's best friend grew up in that house. And so I've been in it many times and struggled up that staircase. And I'm really happy to see what you've done with it. I also attempted to remodel that house twice for different people, and ran into the Historic Preservation Board several times, and then people got discouraged. So I admire your hanging with it. It's a wonderful little place. It has a lot of history, and I think Mr. Polsky has done a great job in retaining the house and how it is.
Thank you. Maybe we'll go to the other end.
I agree with Commissioner Wagstaff. I think that the proposed design, I never spent any time in the house. I would drive by it and wonder that weird, very far distant garage. I thought it was like storage for the park or something, because it's closer to the red trailer than it is to the house, I think. But I think that the design that is being proposed will improve the look of the house. And happy to see that the Heritage Society also agrees. Wanted to make a comment about the grapefruit tree. As somebody who has had really old fruit trees, fortunately or unfortunately, the ones that were in my property all eventually died. The fruit is not good generally when they're older like that. Also, the arborist report says that it is to be removed to promote fire safety, not just because it's a maintenance nuisance. So I just wanted to point that out and have that in the record. So I support removing the grapefruit tree and the cedar tree. I can make the findings for the design review, the variance, and the heritage tree removal.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chalmers?
Yes, I'm sort of in agreement. My children spend a lot of time at the playground, so we see that house a lot. And then it turned out that my youngest best friend's parents, I think, sold you that house. So, so they were, I think they actually tried to work with Commissioner Wagstaff to remodel it in the past. So they were quite excited to see this, design. I think it's actually a really pretty design. I think it's really nice, and I have no reason to have any objection to the design review. I know we're not approving anything tonight, so I'm not going to provide any approvals, but from the way what I've seen the design, I have no objections to anything with the design review in what I see. I think on the variance, subject to an encroachment permit being put, again, I'm speaking with a lawyer's hat on, if with an encroachment permit being put in place and recorded, I think I could make the findings for the variance. And then the cedar tree is definitely a fire risk. I didn't think grapefruit trees were, but it just looked really pretty from the road. And I know it's been there a really long time. I don't really feel strongly either way. If it's going to produce bad fruit and it's going to die anyway, then I wouldn't hold up this, I wouldn't hold this up on the grapefruit tree. But that's the feedback I have tonight. And I guess we're going to see it again on the parking variance. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I also drive by that house all the time. It's kind of a notable one in Larkspur, and all my best friends have lived there. So, but no, I mean, I think the house overall looks nice from a design review perspective. I don't have an issue with it. And then the setback variance, you know, we're sort of matching existing, and so I also don't have a problem with that. The cedar tree, I don't. I mean, I can make the findings for that. I do sort of. You know, some of the findings that we're being asked to make for the heritage trees are, you know, the condition of the tree poses a hazard with respect to disease, danger of falling, proximity to existing or proposed structures, or interference with utilities. I feel like for the grapefruit, I would have a hard time making that specific finding. But at the same time, I don't feel as strongly about grapefruit trees as I do about, you know, our oak trees and redwood trees. So I appreciate that you're saving those. So, you know, I think I might have to reflect a little bit more on the grapefruit tree specifically. But overall, I think the house it looks nice. You know, I think you've done a good job on it, and we're going to hear it again for the parking. So I guess I'll have time to do that. Yeah, I'm a pro fruit tree. So that guy said that
Fruit though.
that's true. Maybe I'm pro fruit.
Grapefruit.
What do you want us to do on this tonight? Just make a motion to continue? I can do that.
Yeah, please.
We'll make a motion to continue to the meeting on the Planning Commission meeting on July 22. Do you want a specific date? Yeah. Okay.
Can we have a second, please?
I'll second it.
And a roll call.
Commissioner Hull,
Yes.
Commissioner Chalmers,
Yes.
Commissioner Campbell,
Yes.
and Commissioner Wagstaff.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, excellent. And again, thank you for your patience tonight. All right, so we're going to move on to the business items. Item A is the June 10th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting minutes. Do we have any public comments on?
No, but I have a comment.
Do you have a comment? Sure.
Oh,
Yeah, I
wait,
think we do
but
have a public comment.
Can I just start by saying I'm not chair? Thank you for the promotion, but thank you.
What is this? Oh, comments on the minutes.
Take public comment.
Oh, wait, I gave you one too.
Can we just defer it to the next meeting? Because I feel like a lot of stuff, like we got an email from Alex like late afternoon.
Yeah.
I would think
And
it's
I had
fine.
to
I would
leave.
take the public comment. Maybe we can
Yeah.
have some
Okay.
direction from you and then
Just
return.
public comment. We should definitely hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we'll go ahead and so we just got a sort of a red line version with a few looks like they're pretty minor edits.
Are they?
Are they?
They're minor,
The email is not though.
right? Some of the ones that I'm recommending is just to indicate who voted for the motions and who made the motions and seconded the motions, and that we announce the appeal periods.
Got it. Okay. Um, do we have any public comments on this, on the minutes? Yes, the June 10th minutes. Yeah. It,
about any of the topics from June 10th or?
yeah. So how it usually works is we've received and read the minutes, and then we'll at this point, usually everyone's gone by now, but if but so typically we will provide any comments that we have, and then approve the minutes, or we'll continue them to a meeting in the future. So if you have a comment on anything in the June 10th meeting, yeah, I think now would be the appropriate time. And if you wouldn't mind just saying your name and
Yeah, Jason Copeland, 123 Pepper. We are the property that is east of 30 Loma Vista. So 30 Loma Vista is directly in line with our view of Mount Tam. That was the principal issue that we had brought up at the June 10th Planning Commission, along with some other things that we had concerns around, but knew that we could get comfortable with. Really the only thing that we wanted to make sure was understood, that when we saw the plans and we saw specifically the height of the kitchen ceiling, that became the topic that we were sort of specifically addressing, because it was the part of the new construction that was going to be significantly higher than the current height of the existing dwelling. And we just wanted to make sure there were some things that were said by the owners of that building that were we found to be inaccurate. Such like we wouldn't meet with them when we tried to meet with, we had already met with them once, and then we offered to meet with them again and to go to their house, and that didn't work out for them. So the point we want to make is we're simply continuing to look for you to look out for the community, look out for the surrounding houses and the value and the home ownership experience, including the view, which has is a significant portion of our home value, not just the kitchen. So if that room were to change its name, or if there was if they had a redesign that also decided to exceed the existing height, we hope that would be considered in the spirit of the decision. And that's really all we're here for. We just found out about that we were allowed to attend and speak at this meeting at 5:30 tonight. We got an email, and she got the email. She was in session, so I apologize. We showed up late. We just rushed over here as soon as we saw this meeting was going on, and it's very important to us, so we didn't want to miss this opportunity. So we didn't really come prepared, but we did want to just hopefully catch you before it was too late. Thank you.
Carrie. I think the one thing, or the major thing that I saw that was different in terms of what she recorded in the minutes and how we understood, and this is why we wanted to come today, was she recorded just the kitchen roof line, but it's actually the entire north end of their house that they're proposing this new ridge line. That's 115 feet in height. And so that was what I was asking Carrie, that it was very clear that we're talking about this whole new ridge line that they're proposing to bring up, not just this kitchen. And so with the minutes, there was she wasn't clear on, I think, Mr. Wagstaff, you had talked about, hey, if you have your plates a certain height, you could still have a 10-foot ceiling. And so again, the kitchen was used as an example, but the entire north ridge is going to be raised, not actually at the height, meeting the height of the current highest point of the current roof line. And so that's what we wanted to come today, just to say, hey, it seems to be some confusion in terms of what the ridge line is. And so I resent those drawings with the highlight of what the ridge line is going to be, because that wasn't very clear on their original drawing. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you. Um,
And just
yeah, maybe staff
to
has comments on this.
make sure that, we just want to make sure the minutes are correct from reviewing the video. Staff believed that only the roof line above the kitchen was required to be reduced and not the whole length of that addition. And that's what the applicants believe the motion said too. So the minutes reflect that, but if you believe the decision was different than that, that would be good to know.
The pointy part is fine.
So the kitchen roof is like this. There's a roof going that way. And my intent was that that whole ridge would drop because it can. And so, I mean, I don't know what they did or what they're showing you, but
Can you remind me what the measurements are? Like, what was that roof
it was
line?
just a couple feet.
But
We
what,
dropped it.
what? I saw I saw the email, I read the email, and I saw your picture. Yes, and you had kind of drawn in what it was going to look like. Yes, I did see that. But what I'm trying to just
So 113.5 is the, I hope I'm getting these numbers correct because it depends on which elevation you're looking at. 113.5 is the highest point of the ridge when you're looking at the, so this would be the side. I could pull this up to share it with you. But I have to look at the numbers.
because you're right, there
when
was the
they're-
roof
when
and
they're
then there
zoomed
was
in.
like a point, like a
Yeah.
peak above
It was
front,
above the
over like some windows, right? And then, but what was that peak? The peak was 113 or?
No,
Peak was
the
150.
peak was higher, 115.
Right.
Correct. Let me pull this up.
Right, if I may, the
Oh, good. Carrie's here
existing
still.
roof, yes.
Great. Thank you, Carrie.
The proposed roof was, I believe, 115. The existing roof was 113.5, which is what from my review of my notes from the meeting as well as the review of the documents, that height of that kitchen roof shall not exceed the height of that elevation 113.5.
Will the entire building, will. I guess I don't have my question ready. Didn't we say something like I thought we all agreed that the new building wouldn't be higher than the existing building. Is that what we finally agreed to? And then I forget what the exact numbers were.
It was my recollection that we had the kitchen, because that was the visible part, or the most visible part from the folks up at Pepper. We wanted to lower the kitchen, but that the rest of it was less visible, and yeah, we didn't.
But was the rest of it also being increased in height? Was the rest of it also being increased in height, or was that staying the same level? Oh, here it is.
So, and this just reflects what the applicants were doing to lower the kitchen roof height. So this pink section indicates the height reduction over the kitchen. And then the rest of the residence is shown at the proposed height. The existing residence, this is the 113. I think it's kind of hard to see on this, but it's in this area here. So this is the existing roof.
So how high is that where your arrow is right now, your cursor? How high is that portion? Is that 113 or 115?
You can see it on that screen. Yeah, that's about that. This is the 113 and mark it. Carrie, am I getting that right? That this
So
is
the lowered portion of the pink, not where your arrow is, but the pink was lowered to the, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to, Yeah, that's the previous profile. That was lowered to the 113.5. But the motion that, and the motion was made by Commissioner Wagg's staff that the kitchen roof was to be lowered. And I guess what staff is really asking is, what is the interpretation of kitchen roof? Is it just over the kitchen or is it that entire ridge line?
Would be it. Well, what's the
I,
point?
I think at the time I thought it was the whole ridge line was being lowered.
Right, because otherwise what's the point of
Yeah.
just lowering it at the front? Because then it's still higher at the back, unless I'm missing something.
No.
I think there's a, oh, if I could flip this to flip. So
How do you
lowering it
remove
just in the
I
front
don't think that's correct.
does reduce it from an angle. So if you could see, it may be hard to see in this picture, but because of the angle of the house, taking it off the kitchen, just off the kitchen does make a difference to the neighbors, even if it doesn't continue along the whole roof line, just because of the angle that it's being viewed.
I mean, when I looked
Yeah.
at the picture before, it was the same situation. And it doesn't look like there's a lot of view being knocked out anyway. But, you know, we sort of, I felt like it was a gesture to lower the kitchen roof. I don't know whether I thought we were lowering the whole ridge or not. I can't remember really.
Yeah, I thought it was just the kitchen, and and that we sort of came to that agreement as like because we had discussed the whole roof or just the kitchen, and think it was my recollection that we agreed on just the kitchen because that's the closest part. That's the part that's most affecting your view. But it was sort of like a compromise, solution.
Kitchen higher than the.
It was
with
at,
the-
I,
with
th I
the
think it
back.
was at the same ridge line, but
Oh,
it's
yeah.
closer to their,
Flash your screen.
so as you're
Can you get
looking
stop
out
my
into the-
screen share? There it is. I see it.
I would like to go back and rewatch the video of the meeting.
I bet you it's not clear.
Yeah, they're on
On
YouTube.
YouTube.
Otherwise they would.
No, I mean, can't do it.
Oh, yeah, we could. Do you want to watch it? We could put it.
I suspect it's not clear. Otherwise you would be able to tell us tonight.
Well, I think when we rewatched it, we thought it said kitchen over and over again.
Okay.
I think that's what we said. And again, it felt like a nice gesture, but there's an awful lot of view already still there.
Yeah, I mean, that's I think staff's interpretation is what I recall, but sounds like.
I mean, my initial thought was if you're just lowering the front and the back is still there, then what's the point of just lowering the front and you're still got the back sticking out? But if you're saying that actually there's a big impact from just lowering the front because of an angle of the building, I don't quite follow that, but I believe what you say. Then maybe, and it sounds like that was the intent, to just lower the front
Because
of the building.
Yeah, because as you step further back, you're looking past it
Okay.
more.
That's a
I mean-
perspective thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure, we can reopen the public comments, but just please come up to the mic so people on the internet can hear you.
We're okay with it being 13-foot ceilings in the front of the house and 10-foot ceilings in the back. Because I think the whole point was that it was excessive in terms of the height of the ceilings and that they could bring it down to 10-foot ceilings and that would be sufficient for them, which they're already maxing out their FAR so they can have 2 ADUs. And all we were asking is that they could lower the ridge line to meet the highest point of their current ridge line. So I think that it was actually, the conversation was, it seems pretty reasonable that you get everything that you want with these ADUs. and you get your views. You just don't have these 13-foot ceilings by raising the entire roof line on the north ridge.
But I think the 13-foot ceiling is at the peak of the roof. So it's really plate height that determines. And a 8-foot plate's a lot different than, I think they had a 9 or 10-foot plate. I can't really remember for sure, but in terms of kind of the feeling of a room, when you get down to 8 feet, it's just basically a basic room. And in a kitchen, it doesn't matter so much, but in a living room or public space, or where you're, it's a bigger space, it feels more spacious and dramatic, I guess.
I also have a couple of like sort of comments on that, so that the ADUs that were included in the house are sort of not our discretion, right? Those are, I think we covered that in the meeting. That's sort of state laws. And so those are like excluded from our decision-making process. And then the other thing that I guess I would point out is that they are below the height limit, that's allowed in the zone by, city code. And so I think that our how I remember it, and like my decision making process was that you know as a sort of a compromise, they're allowed to go higher if they wanted to, but we try to like mediate here as best we can, and so reducing the height of the area that most impacted you, but still allowing them to build the structure that they want to build was sort of our charge. And so there's definitely a balance there of everybody has different interests, and so we're trying to strike to walk a tightrope, between different people's interests. So that was, I mean, that was how I remembered it. You know, I don't know. Anyone else have? Well, maybe we should continue it and I'll watch the video again.
That's what I think.
Right?
Slightly off topic, but what was the final FAR that they had to comply with?
Carrie, hopefully you know that.
Thank you. I do know that they needed to reduce it by 175 square feet, and I'm in the drawings now. So let me just go look at what the original FAR proposal was.
Oh, 055. Didn't we make them come down to 041? Or not? I thought that was.
I think we made
No.
them come down to
041.
0.41 plus the ADU and the JADU, or
Oh.
plus the ADU, right? Because our thinking was the same as we discussed earlier, that if you don't allow an ADU now,
They're going to do it later.
they're going to come in
Yeah.
and put one in the front yard or something.
That's what I'm curious to see if she came up with that same number, because she didn't mention it in the. Because that is exactly what I do remember, but it's not in the minutes. So I'm curious to see what.
So the 175 square feet reduction
missed it.
was in the recommended conditions of approval, which were in your original staff
here it is.
report, and that wasn't changed.
053. But it only brings it down to 053.
Because that's 0.41 plus the ADU. So
is that
right?
Is the math right on that?
Let me check that with my calculator.
I have it on a spreadsheet somewhere. Let me pull it
Okay.
up.
I remember somebody came up with that 175, but I think the intention was to bring it down to, just as you said, 0.41, right? Plus the ADU. Which sounds about right.
So I am getting for the home minus the ADU, that the FAR would be 0.47.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
that's
Hold on a second. Point 45.
It was 0.45 prior to the ADU, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So there's a 0.4 FAR
It
variance.
seemed like
I
the
mean,
800, it's 800 square feet more than what
Yeah.
existed previously.
Yeah, I recall that was the sort of the force behind that.
It's
But
seven, in
FAR.
my calculation, 792.4 square feet higher.
Okay, so it's so it is 0.41 plus the 800 ADU, roughly. 800 yet. I just heard Carrie say a point. That's included, I think.
Yeah, and my calculations did not subtract the JADU, which I think was what you had discussed. So I'm doing that now.
It's all okay on that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the exact reasons for our decision, that's not the part that's unclear, right? Like the floor area ratio.
No, it's not, but I couldn't see it in here, and I just wanted to make sure
I
that
see.
since we're revisiting this, I wanted
Right,
to make
sure,
sure that was accurate. Because what I saw here was the
Yeah, I guess I had that.
0.53.
The existing square feet of the main residence was 2,724 square feet, and the proposed square feet was 2,898, which made the main residence 174 square feet larger than what it was before. I think that's
Correct.
the
So we're saying you can,
175.
so our justification was,
Got it.
we
So
say
that
you can
keep
have
the
what you
existing house
have
size,
existing, but
and that didn't count.
Oh.
So then it didn't count the JADU, the ADU, the garage, carport, and the exempt basement area.
But garages now are part of FAR, right?
So the,
Yeah, so the
yeah, total FAR was 4204
Existing or current, or the proposed?
proposed,
Proposed.
but the existing house was just the existing main residence, not counting the garage and carport, was going up 174 square feet.
Okay.
so I guess it sounds like we're maybe not in full agreement. Is that, I mean, I guess I've heard from Brock.
No, I think
I
we intended to lower the roof at the kitchen.
Okay.
Um,
So is this
but-
is I guess is
at
this,
least I did. I don't know.
I mean,
Because you were the one that proposed it, and
Yeah.
I thought
Yes.
I explained what I had thought. Staff and you have now explained why that doesn't matter, the bit behind the kitchen, so.
so in a case like this, where
What do you
we're
want?
approving the minutes, I mean, we're not re-litigating what happened
Reopening.
at the last meeting.
Correct.
We're
Just
making sure the
making
minutes
are correct,
reflect
reflect your
what
decision.
we discussed, right?
correct.
And what do you want to do? Do you,
Well, I'm confused because, it says on page 5 of the minutes in the middle, Commissioner Wagstaff expressed approval of the design and supported the reduction of the roof height, not the kitchen roof height, and FAR exception, lower roof pitches were suggested. So then, is that the whole roof or is that
Well, I
the
think
kitchen?
it comes down to what the motion was. It's
I know what the motion says, yeah.
So, I mean, if maybe, does anybody want more time
maybe
to
we should go back.
review this? Okay.
Let's do it.
I feel unqualified to review this. I would like to go back and watch the video. That's
Okay.
why my vote would be to punt this until the next meeting.
Understood. Okay, I think that makes sense. So everybody's comfortable with it, and we've heard your, we've heard your concerns, and we will address them and make sure that the minutes are accurate as to what we decided. Yeah, sure, quickly.
So I also recall that the decision, I believe the peak of the conversation was really around that kitchen roof line because that was the name of the roof line, the kitchen roof line. And it, when I look at the new plans where they just take that one section that where the actual kitchen is going to be, when I think of a roof line, I think of the entire line. And it felt as though the sentiment of the commission was to make sure that the roof line was lower. We have a view, for example, from our bedroom, it goes straight out to that roof line. So to take only the kitchen and then pop up anything behind the kitchen and continue with the higher roof line wouldn't really change much for us. But I would hope that, again, sort of the spirit of the decision, as Commissioner Wagstaff had mentioned, and also Commissioner Chalmers, that that is what you recall it being. So thank you.
Thank you. And I guess if is the appeal period, it has
expired
expired? Okay.
for both parties. So I think the applicants would not be happy if it was the whole roof line because they think it's only over the kitchen. So both parties are probably
Right. So how does that
Yeah,
work
whatever.
now if
Yeah.
if you know, somebody's going to think that we changed our decision, right? You guys clearly recall one thing and the applicant clearly recalls another thing. How do we rectify that?
I mean, you'll just need to record your decision in the minutes, and there was really not, Brandy, our city attorney, is still here. And I asked her to be prepared to address this, so she might be able to address it.
Have the plans been approved? In other words, the construction documents?
No, they haven't been submitted yet.
Let me ask a legal question then. Is there a right in the ordinance to preserve a view? Is there a legal right to review?
In the ordinance, there isn't an explicit right. There, it's Municipal Code Section 2.50.060, which addresses which is part of Chapter 2.5 regarding appeals and hearings and rehearings. And it says appeals shall be filed within 10 days from the date of a final decision. And it says shall be filed within 10 days from the date of a final decision, and it leaves it at that. So in this instance, the appeal period ended Friday, June 27th at 5 p.m.
But going back to my original question, there's no
You're asking about view protection.
about view protection.
So this, I guess this came up on the 201 Hawthorne appeal. The city doesn't have a view protection ordinance. The related finding for design review is 18.64.055. Number B, compatibility with neighbors. The heights, elevation, and placement on the site of the proposed structure or additions are compatible with the prevailing neighborhood character. And just to get to the point further, the proposed structure or addition avoids significant and unreasonable loss or interference with privacy, light, solar access, and prominent scenic views, i.e. views of hillsides, Mount Tamalpais, and the bay from primary living areas.
And if you go and look at the video from the last city council meeting, that was exactly what they said relative to the appeal of the one before, which had more detrimental effect than, yeah.
That sounds like our building official is.
Yeah, I actually have a point of order. And maybe the council can comment on this, but I think you need to be really careful about exceeding the Brown Act, because the notice was the discussion about approval of meeting minutes, and it sounds like you're reopening a hearing without it being noticed as such and without representation of the other party, et cetera. So I just wanted to note that.
Thank you for that
Yeah,
reminder.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. Is the intention to continue this matter to?
It sounds like that's our that is the, you know, the desire of some
But
commissioners.
if the appeal period is passed, is there anything to continue?
I think we just want to make sure the minutes are accurate.
We
That's
need to
all
make
it
sure the
is.
minutes
That's all it
reflect
is.
your motion correctly.
Right. I mean, I don't think I guess that's where I'm, maybe it's a question for the attorney, but um, I don't think our intention is to relitigate this,
No.
right? We're not trying to reopen a public hearing, but if one party thinks that the meeting ended one way or our motion ended one way and the other party thinks the opposite, how do we reconcile that now that we're out of the appeal period? Without, I mean, we could renotice and reopen a public hearing. That would be probably one way, right?
But we're out of the appeal.
You're out of the appeal period.
I think what you're saying is let's say we listened to the recording. One solution is we listen to the recording and nothing changes, in which case nothing happens. The other solution is, or the other outcome is that we listen to the minutes and we say, oh, actually, it did include the entire roof line. And then we come back and we have to change the minutes. Then what happens? So one outcome, nothing changes. The minutes are accurate. The roof line only referred to the kitchen. The plans will stay the same. The other outcome is actually the roof line being reduced referred to the whole roof line. We come back, we correct the minutes. Then what happens? Is that the question you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then
so
what? Then
the
what happens?
applicants have,
But-
you know,
Relied on creating plans based on what they thought was on the first set of minutes.
And they're relying on minutes or what was said at the public or at the hearing.
Oh, I
what
see.
was
They're
said
not
at the
okay.
hearing.
If that was what was said at the hearing and they're reliant on that, then I mean, the minutes should reflect that accurately, and we can approve the minutes after everyone has reviewed the recording.
And then you're saying the applicants are expected then to go back and make changes to the plans. That would be the consequence then.
You might want to have legal counsel
Yeah, and I
review
can,
listen to the hearing and give their own interpretation of what was said publicly, objectively, and see if there's any ambiguity.
Good idea, yeah.
we can do that.
Like expensive is that?
And in terms of procedural next steps, based on the outcome, I can give you more specific guidance after we've reviewed that
Or do you
report.
want to wait and just for us just to look at it first?
Yeah.
Or do you want them to look at it? Do you want?
I think
first, do you want them to
I
do
think
it?
Yeah.
giving them
Again, but
Me too.
multiple, when we've listened to it multiple times, there's nothing that clear about it. So I think
That's
it would
what I
be helpful to
suspect.
have you listen to it.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna also have the attorney.
But they're just, yeah, I mean, we can give them a transcript even, but I think it would be useful to know. I think there's more to it probably than just the words that were said to figure out what the motion was. If it's literal, then that's what we put in the minutes.
But I agree. I suspect you've done the best job that you can based on what you've listed. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, let's continue this item to the next meeting.
Jeff will be
Well,
here actually.
we
He
should-
might remember something even.
Right. We should,
know what?
we should make a
Actually-
motion. It's my opinion that we should make a motion to continue this to the next meeting to give us a chance to review
Yeah.
or review the video and make sure that the minutes are
Yeah.
accurate.
Yeah. And did we have a word commissioner down as well who might add some additional thoughts on here. So
We're just making a motion to continue the minutes. Approval
of the minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do it. I'll make a motion to continue the approval of the minutes of June 10, 2025.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Do we have to say a date?
She did.
Oh, sorry.
No, you mean to it.
Date certain.
Do I have to say that? To the next meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay. Can we roll?
Commissioner Wagstaff,
Yes.
Commissioner Campbell.
Yes.
Commissioner Chalmers.
Yes.
Commissioner Hall.
Yes.
The
Okay.
motion carried.
Thank you. And thank you for your attendance here. Like, we want to make sure that we're as accurate as we can be. And so we'll go back and review the video and make sure that the minutes are reflective of our motion.
Mhm.
So, thank you. Okay. Moving on to item 5B, any planning commissioners reports?
I don't know if any of you have been by the library, but it's moving very quickly. They're ahead of schedule according to them. And, we had a meeting, I don't know, last week, I guess, with almost everybody, including the landscape architects. And, so that seems to be the next phase, is to what kind of landscaping we're doing and where tables are going and where people can sit and whether there's a stage and, lots of activity.
That's great.
So it's going to be a very
It's awesome.
sweet space.
Awesome. Good to hear.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, then I'll move, oh, we need a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, are we all here for the next meeting? I'm curious to.
Yeah.
22nd. Yeah, I am.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
Okay, can we have a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Yep.
Yes.
Aye.
All right, adjourned.
Thank you.